Welcome back to another explainer. Today we're diving into something that is absolutely, literally, make or break for anyone keeping a marine aquarium. If you've got a reef tank, you already know we aren't just keeping a pet here, right? We're managing a highly complex, seriously expensive, and beautifully fragile living ecosystem. But how do you actually protect that massive investment from a hidden disaster? Well, the answer lies in a simple, highly structured process that has to happen before anything ever touches your main tank's water. So let's jump right into the source material for this explainer and unpack exactly why quarantine is the ultimate shield for your reef.
We've all been there, right? You're at the store, you spot that perfectly colored coral or that incredibly active, stunning fish, and the excitement just totally kicks in. You bring it home in the bag, you're eager to acclimate it, watch it explore its new home. It's a great feeling. But before you open that bag and introduce it to your pristine display tank, you really have to stop and ask yourself, is your newest addition hiding a secret? Because while the excitement of a new arrival is incredible, the stakes are so high. You might actually be bringing home a whole lot more than you paid for. I mean, what microscopic threats might be lurking completely out of sight in that water or on that animal?
Here's the harsh reality. You can stare at a fish or a frag in the shop for an hour, and it can look absolutely 100% flawlessly healthy. But that healthy appearance? It can easily hide a complete disaster. The source material strongly emphasizes that even when livestock looks totally perfect, parasites, bacteria, and other tiny threats could still be right there. They're basically just waiting for the right moment to strike. When you bypass quarantine, you're essentially gambling the health of your entire established ecosystem on the hope that what you see is exactly and solely what you get. And that's a huge risk.
Section 1. The hidden reef threat. Unseen dangers in the water. So what are we really up against? We're up against what the hobby calls hitchhikers. These are unwanted marine organisms. We're talking things like bristleworms, flatworms, or microscopic spores of nuisance algae. They literally just secretly ride into your tank, hidden deep inside the crevices of corals or porous live rock. And the truly tricky part about these threats is their timing. As the source points out, fish can carry parasites that only flare up under new stress. And those hitchhikers on corals? They often only become noticeable after the new livestock has gone through the stress of acclimation. By the time they actually reveal themselves, well, they're already inside your tank.
Section 2. A vulnerable ecosystem. Let's look at why your display tank is at risk. Reef systems are uniquely vulnerable for one simple reason. Corals and invertebrates have extremely narrow tolerances for treatments. Think about it. If your fish gets a parasite in the main display tank, your options are severely limited. You can't just dump a strong copper medication or an aggressive anti-parasitic into a reef tank. Why? Because the exact same chemicals that kill the parasite are going to completely devastate your sensitive corals, your beneficial microbes, and your cleanup crew invertebrates. Once a problem establishes itself in the main display, it becomes incredibly difficult, and sometimes flat-out impossible, to fully remove it without accidentally crashing the entire ecosystem you've worked so hard to build. Section 3. The quarantine advantage. Treating problems safely and effectively.
Now, when problems appear in the quarantine tank instead, your treatment options are vastly broader and far more reliable. Because you don't have sensitive corals or established microbial beds to worry about in quarantine, you can use highly effective methods. We're talking about running freshwater dips, using targeted medications, or performing strict observation-based interventions. If you tried to pull that off in a fully stocked display tank, the risk is astronomical. You'd be endangering everything. Quarantine essentially creates a safe, controlled security checkpoint where you can bring out the heavy artillery to eradicate pests safely.
And hey, there's another massive advantage here that honestly gets overlooked all the time. If you drop a new fish straight into your display and a week later your tank has a huge parasite outbreak, you're left completely guessing. Is it a problem with your water quality, your husbandry, or did the new arrival bring it in? Isolating new items instantly solves this puzzle. As the source material notes, if symptoms like white spots, fin issues, or weird behavioral changes pop up in the quarantine tank, you know exactly where they came from. The new item brought the problem. It just makes troubleshooting so much faster and completely eliminates the guesswork.
Section 4. Beyond just fish. It's time to bust the myth of the fish-only quarantine.
Okay, a lot of people think only our finned friends need a timeout, but it is definitely not just fish. Many successful reef creepers quarantine new corals and fragile coral frags to make sure their polyps stay healthy. They quarantine porous live rock. They even quarantine newly sourced sand. And honestly, this is the most surprising one, derived straight from our source text: nets, containers, and other aquarium equipment. Yeah, literally equipment. Dips and isolated holding periods for these items ensure that no microscopic pests are hitching a ride on a wet net,
or hiding in the tiny crevices of a frag plug. You have to confirm that no pests appear and that your water quality stays totally stable before any of that crosses over to your main display.
We really can't let our guard down, even for stuff that looks completely lifeless. Seemingly lifeless additions, what the source refers to as dirty additions like porous rock or newly sourced sand, they can introduce super persistent algae problems. If you skip inspections and just dump unquarantined sand or rock right into your system, you are risking unwanted organisms becoming permanent, long-term residents in your pristine display tank. A simple holding period can prevent literal months of battling exhausting nuisance algae outbreaks.
Section 5. The quarantine routine. Turning uncertainty into a controlled process.
So, while there isn't one single, magical, universal setup, an effective quarantine always follows a predictable routine. The quarantine methodology breaks down into these 3 actionable steps. Step 1. Isolation in a separate tank. It absolutely must be physically separate from your main system. Step 2. Careful daily observation. You aren't just putting them in there and ignoring them, you are actively watching. And Step 3. A defined timeline before transfer. You don't just move them when you get impatient, you wait out the biological life cycle of potential pests. The absolute key here is consistency.
Now, to actually make that methodology work, you have to follow these best practices closely. You need a dedicated container or tank that runs reliably. You must use completely separate tools. Do not use your quarantine net in your display tank. The source explicitly warns against cross-contamination between your quarantine setup and your display. Every single day, you need to check in on the animal's appetite, their breathing rate, their coloration, and just their overall behavior. If you see any symptoms, you address them promptly right there in quarantine. You absolutely do not wait until the display is affected to take action.
And that brings us to the crucial point of this whole explainer. Quarantine turns uncertainty into a process. For most reef keepers, the why of quarantine ultimately comes down to 2 things: cost and control. You're protecting a highly expensive, delicate living ecosystem from problems that can spread like wildfire and linger for months. By building this routine into your regular husbandry, you take the terrifying uncertainty out of buying new livestock, and you replace it with a controlled, secure process that guarantees the safety of your tank.
Which leaves us with one big final question to think about. Before your very next purchase, take a look at your beautiful, thriving display tank and ask yourself, is your expensive reef truly protected? Quarantine is seriously one of the highest impact steps you can possibly take to keep a reef stable, resilient, and thriving for years to come. Don't risk the amazing ecosystem you've built. Build quarantine into your routine today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and we will catch you next time as we continue to break down the most vital information for your success.